For most NFL teams, free agency moves fast, phones ring, contracts move, players disappear from the market almost as quickly as they arrive, but sometimes. The most revealing thing isn't what a team does, it's what they don't do. Because while teams across the league were signing offensive linemen, trading receivers, and locking down key positions, Cleveland, a team that clearly needed help on the offensive line, stayed quiet, not cautious, not patient. Quiet, and the silence started getting noticeable, especially after one name came off the board, because when that happened, something about Cleveland's situation started to feel different. And the strange part is, nobody really explained why asterisk early in free agency. The expectation around Cleveland was fairly simple. The offensive line needed attention. That part wasn't controversial, it wasn't speculative. It was obvious to almost anyone watching the roster construction, and when free agency opens, teams with clear needs usually act quickly, especially at positions that shape the entire offensive line is one of those positions. Quarterbacks get the headlines, receivers get the highlights, but offensive linemen control how the entire offense functions so naturally. Attention turned toward one specific possibility, a center who many assumed could fit into Cleveland's plans. Tyler Linderbaum. There were reasons for the connection, relationships, and coaching circle scheme, familiarity, the sense that Cleveland could be a logical landing spot, and for a brief moment, that possibility felt real enough that people began talking about it as if it were already moving in that direction. But then the market moved, and suddenly, Linderbaum wasn't available anymore. He signed with the Raiders on a 3-year deal, reportedly worth $81 million. A contract that would make him the highest paid center in the NFL from the outside. That part isn't shocking when a top offensive lineman hits the market. Someone usually pays, but the timing around Cleveland made the moment feel different, because once that signing happened, something became obvious. The center market had changed. And according to some early reporting and discussion, once Linderbaum was off the board, there weren't many clear options left at that position, which raises an uncomfortable question. If Cleveland needed help on the offensive line, and the top center option was now gone, then what exactly was the plan? No answer came immediately, just more silence, and that silence started standing out. Asterisk to understand why this moment caught attention, you have to understand how NFL teams usually behave. During free agency, front offices rarely enter the market with only one option. There are layers to every decision: primary, target, secondary, options, contingency plans, because once the market opens, things move quickly. Players sign within hours. Deals that took weeks to negotiate suddenly close in minutes. That's why teams often move early if they feel pressure at a position, especially on the offensive line, because once the top tier disappears, the remaining market can change dramatically. Prices rise, availability drops, and suddenly teams are deciding whether to overpay or pivot entirely. That's the balancing act. But while this was happening across the league, Cleveland's situation stayed strangely quiet. Other teams were active. The Giants reportedly signed tight end Isaiah likely to a 3-year deal. The Steelers made a move involving wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. The Dolphins reportedly signed quarterback Malik Willis to a multi-year contract. Even teams without immediate offensive line crises were making moves, contracts, trades, extensions, momentum. The league was moving, and yet Cleveland, a team with a widely discussed offensive line issue, hadn't signed an offensive lineman during that window. That doesn't necessarily mean something went wrong. Sometimes teams simply wait, sometimes negotiations stall, sometimes front offices believe their internal options are better than the market. But timing matters in the NFL, and when other teams begin filling their needs while you remain still, people start wondering, especially when names you were linked to begin disappearing. And that's when another subtle shift appeared, because after Linderbaum signed elsewhere, discussions started turning toward a different possibility. Maybe Cleveland was comfortable staying with Luke Weippler at center. Maybe the plan wasn't to sign someone after. Oh, maybe the offensive line strategy looked different internally than it did externally. But if that was the case, The silence suddenly made more sense. It just raised a different kind of question asterisk in the NFL. Roster decisions rarely exist in isolation. Every move affects something. Else salary cap space, quarterback protection, offensive stability, future draft decisions, and Cleveland's situation is especially sensitive because of one variable that quietly sits at the center of the entire conversation: the quarterback. Protecting the quarterback is the foundational priority of any offensive line, and Cleveland's roster construction has already committed significant resources to that position, which means the offensive line isn't just another position group, it's the structure holding the entire investment together. That's why timing matters here, because while other teams were adjusting their rosters during the same free agency window, Cleveland's offensive line situation remained unresolved, and the longer a situation like that stays unresolved, the more pressure begins to shift elsewhere. Coaches adjust their expectations, front offices revisit internal evaluations, draft priorities quietly change. Sometimes nothing dramatic happens, but sometimes a team begins solving a problem in ways that weren't originally planned. That's the hidden layer of free agency. Decisions that aren't made can be just as influential as the ones that are, and the strange part about Cleveland's situation is that we don't yet know which category this falls into. Was this patience, a calculated decision, a financial limitation, or something else entirely? Because from the outside, one thing is clear: the league moved quickly. The offensive line market shifted in Cleveland didn't move with it, at least not yet, which leaves one quiet question hanging over the situation: if the Browns needed help on the line, and that help started disappearing from the market, then what exactly were they waiting for? Asterisk, sometimes the most important moments in the NFL aren't the big signings, they are the pauses, the decisions that don't happen, the silence between moves, because those moments reveal how teams actually think, and Cleveland just had one of those moments. The question now isn't whether the Browns will address the offensive line eventually. Every team does. The real question is something quieter: was this moment part of the plan, or the moment the plan changed? Let me know what you think, because something about this situation still feels unfinished. Unfinished.